The translator clicked in my ear just as I dodged a spear that whistled past my head. It buried itself in the wall behind me with a solid thunk, vibrating from a force. My heart hammered. Across from me, the Tharkari warrior stood tall, 7 feet of armor muscle and unblinking yellow eyes. Her name was HFY, and she was terrifying, undefeated in over 200 combat trials. I'd read the dossier. I should have kept my mouth shut. Instead, I did what humans do when we're panicking. I laughed. A dry, nervous chuckle slipped out, and I said, "Whoa, you're kind of cute when you're angry." There was a pause. A long, painful pause. HFY froze mid-step, her blade still raised. Her eyes locked onto me, not with fury, but something far more dangerous. Confusion. Then her skin flushed. Literally, it turned a bright crimson hue, pulsing like heat beneath a steel surface. I blinked. She blinked, and then she turned and walked away. Just left the arena. The silence was so thick it rang in my ears. The other Tharkari warriors stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The diplomatic aide from the core delegation ran up, panting, eyes wide. "What did you say to her?" he hissed. I called her cute." The aide groaned and slapped a hand in his face. The translator must have filtered that through context mode 7. It probably interpreted cute as a high-level courtship phrase. You didn't compliment her. You issued a bonding challenge. She thinks you're trying to mate, or duel, or both. I stood there like an idiot while the realization sank in. I hadn't just embarrassed myself. I'd possibly committed a cultural violation on interstellar television. Great. Humanity had just joined the Galactic Accord, a fragile alliance held together by diplomacy, shared trade, and strict rituals. We were the newcomers, the ones from the death world. Everyone expected us to mess something up eventually. I just didn't think I'd do it this fast. Later that evening, I was summoned to the observation dome. Apparently, HFY had requested a formal right of intent. It was one of their oldest traditions. A form of challenge, not necessarily to the death, but always public, always binding. To back out would mean dishonor. When I entered the dome, the light dimmed automatically. A circle of Tharkari stood around the platform. HFY waited in the center, arms folded, crimson hue faded but her eyes sharp. "You mocked me in the arena," she said, voice smooth like sliding metal. "Or you admired me. Clarify." I swallowed. Admired? She tilted her head. "Then we engage in the right." "Wait, what exactly is the right?" I asked. The same aide from earlier leaned toward me and whispered, "It's a challenge of truth and meaning. You show your intent. She shows hers. Emotionally, psychically. If your truths align, you walk away honored. If not, I repeated, she might kill you, or bond with you, or both. They don't separate romance and battle very well." I took a breath and stepped forward. "Fine, I'm in." A low murmur echoed through the gallery. HFY stepped closer and extended her hand. Between her fingers was a crystal shard glowing faint blue. A thought stone. It linked minds temporarily, broadcasting intent and emotion. No lies, no games. She placed it against my temple. The world blurred, and then I saw everything. Memories, fragments, sensations. Her first kill at age 12, the pride of surviving blood trials, the pressure of leadership, the loneliness of being feared, never understood. But more than that, I saw her confusion when I'd said the word. Cute. There was no direct equivalent in Tharkari. The translator had guessed, and that guess had sparked an avalanche inside her. In return, she saw me, barely holding it together, remembering Earth, remembering sarcasm as survival, jokes as shields, the time I laughed at my own grandfather's funeral just to stop crying. I felt her shock at the contradictions, how humans thrived on emotional chaos. Our minds didn't compartmentalize like theirs. We bled into everything. "You feel too much," she said inside the link. "We have to," I replied. "It's how we survive." The link severed with a sharp crack. I staggered back, breath catching in my throat. XHRE stood motionless. Around us, the observers murmured louder. Then she spoke, not to me, but to the council. The humans' words were not a mockery. They were layered, confusing, but truthful. I accept their intent. There was an audible gasp from one of the older Tharkari. Another barked. You dishonor your lineage. XHRE turned to them slowly. Or perhaps I evolve it. She left without another word. I followed the aide out in stunned silence. Later that night, I sat alone, watching the stars beyond the station's observation bay. My head still spun from the thought stone, from her memories, from mine. I'd survived. I'd spoken my truth. And somehow, I'd made the most dangerous alien warrior in the Accord blush. I couldn't help but laugh. She didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not a word, not a glance, just silence. Everywhere I went on the station, I felt eyes on me. The human who made a Tharkari commander blush. Some thought it was a joke. Others, a scandal. A few looked at me like I was radioactive. I couldn't blame them. Emotional precision was everything in the Accord. To them, my slip-up was like juggling knives in a crowded room. Impressive if it worked, catastrophic if it didn't. On the morning of the 3rd day, a message appeared on my comm slate. You will attend. No weapons. No deception. No armor. No signature. But I knew who it was from. I arrived at the Hall of Stillness just before cycle shift. It was a circular room, walls made of obsidian alloy, echoing even the softest breath. In the center, 2 seats faced each other with another thought stone suspended between them. She was already seated. XHRE's armor was gone. She wore ceremonial robes, crimson and gray, her face unreadable. She gestured to the opposite seat. I sat down, slowly, deliberately. The moment I touched the armrest, the thought stone descended and flared to life. Again it began, but this time it went deeper. She let me in, not just to memories, but instincts. Her world was built on control. Her kind bred out hesitation, fear, empathy. Warriors trained not just to fight, but to silence every flicker of emotion. They thought it made them strong. What she saw in me challenged everything. I watched her relive our link, frame by frame. My emotions, erratic and layered. Humor wrapped around fear. Attraction soaked in panic. No calculation, just reflex. She asked me, in that floating mental space between words, why do you not guard your thoughts? I answered honestly, because we don't have the luxury. On Earth, you learn to read people fast or get eaten alive. Sometimes literally, sometimes emotionally. Your species laughs under threat. We laugh to stay human. She absorbed that. I could feel her trying to wrap her disciplined mind around the concept. Empathy as survival. Vulnerability as tactic. Her people had always measured strength in kills and silence. We measured ours in stories and scars. She showed me a vision. Her standing in a hall of mirrors, surrounded by reflections of herself. All of them perfect, unflinching, controlled. But in the mirror behind them, there was a sliver of something else. Me, confused, awkward, alive. You broke something in me, she said. No, I told her. Something cracked. That's not the same as breaking. The thought stone pulsed harder. Her memories shifted to confusion. After our first encounter, she'd spent a full day reviewing every human cultural file in the station archives. She had watched a 20-minute Earth comedy reel, then stared at the wall for an hour trying to understand irony. She had read transcripts of human courtship and thought half of it was psychological warfare. Still, she kept watching, kept learning. She showed me her struggle, trying to reconcile my words, cute, with a worldview that didn't allow for softness. To her, admiration was a battlefield. Love, if it existed at all, was domination, mutual respect through conflict. And yet I'd survived our encounter not by fighting harder, but by saying something completely illogical, something human. I do not understand you, she said aloud, this time with her real voice. But I cannot ignore you. That was progress. She ended the link abruptly. The crystal dimmed. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Then she stood, You will come with me, she said. I followed her without asking where we were going. She led me through a part of the station I hadn't seen, an ancient corridor with etched walls, probably older than most civilizations in the Accord. At the end was a sealed room. She entered a code. The door slid open. Inside was a single display, a memorial, dozens of names etched into black stone. Beneath them, a plaque, those who felt too much. I turned to her. What is this? A heretic shrine, she said. Tharkari who broke under motion, who felt love, pain, mercy. We buried them in shame. But you kept their names. She nodded once. Even exiles deserve memory. But I used to come here to remind myself what not to become. And now, she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer to the wall and rested her hand on the stone. Now I come to wonder if they weren't broken, just ahead of their time. That hit harder than I expected. She turned to me. I will speak before the tribunal tomorrow. They want me stripped of rank. Emotion, they say, is contamination. I stayed silent. I intend to fight, she added, but not with a blade. With this. She lifted the thought stone, now deactivated. They won't believe me, she said. But if they see you, if they feel what I felt, you want me to link with the council? No, I want you to speak, just as you did to me. No filters, no protocol, just human. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I understood what it meant. Once we shared who we really were with the galaxy, there'd be no going back. You sure you want them to know what we're really like? I asked. She gave the faintest smile I'd ever seen on her face. They fear you already. I think it's time they understood why. The council hall was vast, built to intimidate. Arcs of white alloy curved overhead like the ribcage of some ancient titan. With the council seated in ascending tiers, their expressions unreadable cross-species. Protocols dictated silence until addressed, but silence wasn't the problem. The problem was what they thought I was. A mistake. A disruptive anomaly that nearly triggered a diplomatic collapse. XHRE stood beside me at the center dais. Not armored, not armed, just present. She had never looked more dangerous. She was putting her entire legacy on the line by defending me. Defending what I represented. The Tharkari Council rose first. You broke formality in ritual combat. You spoke carelessly. Your words ignited public confusion. Why should the Accord trust your species with diplomatic ties when you treat our traditions like theater? I stepped forward. Because we survive by not understanding everything first. That's how we learn. The chamber stirred. I continued. On Earth, we're born into chaos. Environments that try to kill us. Social systems that contradict themselves. We laugh to defuse tension, cry to rebuild trust, joke in moments of despair. To outsiders, it looks unstable. To us, it's essential. A Zithri delegate hissed. You mean to tell us that your strength is emotional unpredictability? Yes, I said without flinching. Because it's honest. You've built civilizations on structure, hierarchy, obedience. We built ours by constantly challenging those things. Not because we're reckless, but because we adapt. Another counselor leaned forward. And what does that have to do with Commander XHRE? I looked over at her. She didn't move, but her presence anchored me. She's what happens when someone bred for control meets someone born from chaos. I said. She didn't break. She grew. She saw something in me that wasn't weakness. It was another kind of strength. We feel deeply, and that emotion fuels what we build, what we fight for, and who we protect. That's not a flaw. That's our power. A flicker of shifting expressions, alien, unreadable, but unmistakably tense. I pressed on. Look, I didn't come here to manipulate anyone. I said something impulsive. Yes, but in that moment, I didn't see a warrior. I saw a person. That's what you're missing. You've built walls so tall that even your own people are suffocating behind them. Now, XHRE stepped forward. When I first encountered a human, she said slowly, clearly, I believed he mocked me. Our teachings say emotion clouds a warrior's path. But after linking minds, I saw truth. Not ridicule, not insult, only uncontrolled honesty. It shook me. She scanned the chamber, eyes harder than steel. I was taught to kill uncertainty, but uncertainty is what allows growth. For the first time, I felt something I was never trained for: curiosity, wonder, even admiration. The word hung in the air. A rustle of disbelief rippled through the Tharkari contingent. The lead counselor spoke again. So you now wish us to accept that unrefined emotion, humor, affection, even romantic infusion, should be part of interspecies diplomacy? I didn't hesitate. Yes, because if you don't, you'll never survive us. Silence. A long, pulsing silence. Then the Zithari leaned forward. Clarify. Humans aren't coming to the galaxy with perfect discipline or centuries of accord doctrine. We're coming with instinct, with contradiction. We're the species that gave a universe nuclear fire before we figured out world peace. We push first, learn later, bleed always. We will frustrate you. We will confuse you, but we will surprise you, because we always do. XHRE added, and that unpredictability, it made me see again. I was sleepwalking through protocol. Now I question. I choose. She turned, facing her people directly. Strip my rank if you must. But know this, I am more than I was before, because I allowed myself to feel. The tension snapped like a wire. The Tharkari elders erupted in overlapping tones, some shouting for exile, others stunned into silence. The tribunal went into immediate recess. We were escorted out without ceremony. Hours passed. No word, no judgment. We sat in the debrief chamber, not speaking, not touching, just existing in that stretched silence between what had been and what might come. Finally, the council aide entered. You're not being exiled, he said flatly. They couldn't agree, which means precedent holds. No ruling. I raised an eyebrow. So we're free to go? He nodded. Technically, yes. But every diplomatic channel is watching you now. Every species is waiting to see what you do next. He looked at XHRE. Especially you. When he left, I slumped back in the chair. Well, that could have gone worse. XHRE didn't laugh, but she didn't scowl either. You destabilize a 1,000-year-old order by calling someone cute. Technically, I muttered. I said it by mistake. Even more dangerous, she said. There was a long pause. And then, for the first time since I'd met her, she smiled. Not a warrior's grin. Not a mask. A real, human kind of smile. And for the first time, I wondered, what was this between us? I hadn't intended to start anything. But maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of the mistake. Maybe it was the beginning of something bigger. They sent us on a diplomatic mission to neutral ground. A trial run, they said, observe and report. No weapons, minimal personnel. Just a human and a Tharkari warrior who once nearly derailed an entire alliance by exchanging a single misunderstood word. We arrived at the trading hub of Vox Taluan, an independent spaceport teeming with species from every edge of the mapped galaxy. Nothing here was clean. Nothing here was quiet. And nothing here followed protocol. It was perfect. XHRE hated it. She walked 2 steps behind me at first, scanning every corner, memorizing escape routes, categorizing threat levels. I didn't blame her. Vox Taluan made Earth look organized. But I watched her slowly stop cataloging and start observing, not as a soldier, as something else. A Tharnan merchant tried to overcharge us for fruit by tripling the numbers mid-transaction. I caught the trick, smiled, and bartered him back down with jokes and exaggerated facial expressions. XHRE stared at me like I'd performed a magic trick. Later, she asked, "Why didn't you just threaten him?" "Because I wanted him to like me enough to sell to me tomorrow," I said. Fear burns bridges. Humor builds them. She didn't reply, but she ate the fruit. Our mission was to meet with the Kreltians, a xenophobic but technologically advanced race who had always refused any direct communication with the Accord. Until now, until us, they didn't want ambassadors. They wanted curiosity. And apparently we were it. We entered their dome ship after undergoing a decontamination scan that felt more like a medical dissection. Once inside, we were led to a flat chamber of shifting crystal panels. No chairs, no translator drones, just us in them. A Krelsian, all glinting eyes and multi-jointed limbs, floated forward. You were the chaotic pair. I nodded. That's one way to put it. You disrupted hierarchy. It continued. Caused informational ripples across 16 networks. Instability increases our interest. You want instability? I asked. We want proof that unpredictability yields evolutionary value. It answered. Emotional variance, divergent logic, irrational mating cues. These are intriguing. Display. XHRE turned to me slowly. They want a demonstration. I shrugged. Of what? Our personalities. She stepped closer, her voice low. Of why they should let us into their space. I hesitated, then did what no Accord representative would ever do in such a tense negotiation. I laughed, not a polite chuckle, a real laugh. The Krelsians shifted in what I could only interpret as alarm. You are amused? One asked. No, I'm terrified, I replied. But this is how humans deal with terror. We laugh, we flirt, we improvise. And yeah, sometimes we blur out words like cute in the middle of a death match. XHRE didn't flinch. Instead, she added, and sometimes we learn that feelings, raw, uncontrollable ones, can reveal more truth than any treaty. The Krelsian leaned closer. And what truth did you uncover? That strength isn't just in discipline, she answered. It's in vulnerability, in acknowledging what you feel before it calcifies into something destructive. There was a long silence. Then, the floor beneath us shifted and glowed. Access granted. They let us into their systems. Gave us partial access to their tech archives. It wasn't full trust, but it was a start. Back on the station, things were different. We weren't pariahs anymore. We were problems, and problems get studied, cataloged, sometimes even promoted. The Accord Council sent a message. Continue interactions. Monitor for cultural spread. You are now classified as a bridge pair. Bridge pair? I asked XHRE. She nodded. 2 from different orders. Made to connect. And if we fail, we were never meant to succeed by their rules anyway. That night in my quarters, she stood at the window, looking out at the stars. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Saying what you said. I didn't answer right away. Then I walked to her side and said, no, because in that moment, I said what I saw, and what I saw mattered. She turned to face me, eyes no longer guarded. No protocol, no fear. I'm still learning to understand what you are, she whispered, but I no longer wish to unsee you. For a species trained to suppress everything, that was a confession. I reached out, not for anything grand, just a gesture. And this time, she didn't pull away. That simple contact, fingertips brushing knuckles, was more revolutionary than any speech we'd given, more dangerous than any warship we'd built, because in that tiny act of shared vulnerability, we proved the one truth the galaxy still refused to understand. You don't need to conquer a heart to connect with it. Sometimes all it takes is a mistake.